Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the 11 books I read in 2022 and how they fit into the book that is my life. It'll make sense as we go along, but I'll also be providing snippets and thoughts so that you know if the book is right for you and if you'll enjoy it. Let's do it. Chapter 1. Medicine. The year started off as any new year does. My throat hurts. It's 1st of January. And being the crazy, ambitious person that I am, I added so many books to my Goodreads to try and read, but although I didn't manage to read all of them, typically, I definitely read more this year than I did many other years, so I'm taking that as a plus. In January, as everyone does, I really wanted to start my year off on a high, and as I'm studying medicine, and everyone raves about Paul Kalanithi, who was a brain surgeon that sadly died of cancer, I decided to read his book talking about his diagnosis, being a doctor who's dying, and death. If you want to cry, gain an insight in what it's like to be a doctor, and understand how your mindset might change when you are approaching death, then I recommend this 5 out of 5 read 100%. Here's a little snippet from the book to see if you'd enjoy it. Grand illnesses are supposed to be life clarifying. Instead, I knew I was going to die, but I'd known that before. The way forward would seem obvious if only I knew how many months or years I had left. Tell me 3 months, I'd spend time with family. Tell me 1 year, I'd write a book. Give me 10 years, I'd get back to treating diseases. The truth that you live one day at a time didn't help. What was I supposed to do with that day? Chapter 2. Attachment. After reading this book, I then travelled back to my uni in Manchester because I had my January exams. I probably spent about 2 months recovering from the insane amount of stress that us medical students go through before exams, and at this point I'd been in my relationship for about 1.5 years, long distance might I add, and my boyfriend had finally managed to come to the UK because he got a visa. I was so excited, but we had a lot of clashes about things that I couldn't exactly put my finger on. In an attempt, as always, to try and micromanage every part of my life, I deduced that attachment styles must be the reason for all of these things. I also needed a change from anything biology related because I was so sick from studying the medicine. So I went to the bookshop and I picked up Attached. And every day I took this book on the bus to uni with me, which was about 3 stops by the way, and finished it in about a week. And what did I learn? There are 3 attachment styles: anxious, avoidant, secure. You're one of them. If possible, try to be with a secure person. If you're not secure, try work on your attachment style that you unfortunately probably picked up from your family. And if you're avoidant, don't even bother reading this book because it literally just speaks about anxious people. Here's a quote from Attached. Most people are only as needy as their unmet needs, which I love. Chapter 3. Digital Detox. So after reading Attached, I became a relationship guru in my mind, professing attachment styles and even talking about it in this mini journaling club that I set up at my uni, asking everyone to take a quiz about which attachment styles they were. I think we kind of like to put ourselves into boxes. It makes us feel more in control. The momentum from reading a book in a week, which was the biggest triumph for me ever, got me to pick up Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. This didn't really match my headspace at the time, but I was just gifted it by my friend Sarah. I was on a roll and literally competing with myself at this point and finished the book in 3 days. I learned that I needed to stay the away from technology and go on a 30-day detox as recommended. Online time should only be for a few select things, not for everything as it is in most of our lives. I started telling everyone they should go on a 30-day detox. I started thinking, when in my life can I do this? Even though I probably would never even do this because I love my computer. Why do I profess the things that I would never do myself? Don't know. Here's a quote from Digital Minimalism. Real conversation takes time, and the total number of people for which you can uphold this standard will be significantly less than the total number of people you can follow, retweet, like, and occasionally leave a comment for on social media, or ping with the occasional text. Once you no longer count the latter activities as meaningful interaction, your social circle will seem at first to contract. Chapter 4. Look back and reflect. Digital minimalism was a bit of a random turning point that doesn't really fit in with my life theme, as I like to call, of mental health and health type content. So I went back into my box, made me feel a bit more comfortable, and found the book You Wish Your Parents Had Read. I honestly was nervous to read this, but as I now had so much confidence from reading Attached, I knew I had to prosper into the world of parental issues to really try to figure out what the hell is going on in modern relationships. The book was very repetitive, but very good, and I did learn a pretty good lesson from it, that there are no winners in the fight that is the relationship. My competitive side could not understand this before, and still struggles with this idea sometimes. The main theme of the book, other than speaking about conflict, was that children's feelings need to be accepted, and that if they aren't, such as by telling them to stop crying or to stop doing something in an aggressive way, this can promote different traumas in their life that will come up later on because they don't know how to accept their emotions. Here's a quote about the idea of conflict. If feelings are left out of it, both sides can get more and more heated as they play what I call fact tennis. lobbing reasons over the net to each other, finding more and more to hit the other person with. In this style of arguing, the aim of the conflict becomes to win points rather than find a workable solution. Finding out about differences and working through them is about understanding and compromise, not about winning. Chapter 5, back to the productive lane. We sometimes get these weeks off during term time, and so I decided to go back to London, where my family is, and spend more time there. I think I started thinking about everything I'd learned from the previous book and observing how I'd grown up and what made me who I am right now. I decided it was best probably to move on to something a bit more in lane and not so thought-provoking, and something with as boring as a title, The Power of Habit, really grabbed my attention. But I won't criticise this book, because it was actually very good and very anecdotal, which was the best part about it. Not the actual habit learning. This didn't really change the way I approached that. The thing I liked best was how he spoke about Starbucks motivating their employees. Here's a quote. Simply giving employees a sense of agency, a feeling that they are in control, that they have genuine decision-making authority, can radically increase how much energy and focus they bring to their jobs. Chapter 6, distraction. As term goes by, I tend to see myself get more robotic because the work demands gets greater and greater. This then sweeps into my personal life, which means I make less time for the people I care about and actually relaxing. I think I realised this and entered this phase where I thought, you can't be so one-dimensional, Jess, and so non-fictional. Embrace fiction, books aren't just about absorbing information and like getting something out of it. So I picked up classic It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. And I know everyone's obsessed with this book, and I read it so quickly, but my opinion is that it's quite basic and shit a little bit. The characters didn't really have much depth, but if you like easy reading, then go for it, because I read it very quickly and it's quite relaxing. I have no quote from this book to provide, but I don't want to judge the author because maybe her other books are good and I know everyone likes her. Chapter 7, helping others. It was April now, and my family and I, plus my boyfriend and my brother's girlfriend, went on an amazing trip to Mexico. But as the holiday brings more time to reflect, I started thinking about how many of my friends were suffering from anxiety, including myself at times. I love to help people, especially people with mental health problems, but I feel like when someone likes helping people so much, you've got to ask why. So why? That's a topic for another video. But it seems that most people in my life, including me, sometimes suffer. I'll take a stab at why. Social media, increased comparison, increased demand, increased criticism of oneself, all by another person on you. But I think this book explains it a lot better than I do. The Anatomy of Anxiety, where she differentiates between true anxiety and false anxiety. True being the feeling of anxiety, which is the body telling you that something is not in alignment. False being almost like the check engine light of the body telling you that something is not right physically. Taking meds just covers up this false anxiety, which she says is where our society is going wrong. A good quote, I found that giving a diagnostic label, though it can offer immediate relief as a succinct interpretation of a fairly messy circumstance, can soon become a straitjacket of sorts, narrowly defining people and profoundly shaping their life narratives. Patients sometimes begin to conform their stories towards a diagnosis, making themselves smaller as opposed to opening to the more expansive lives they could be leading. Chapter 8, Summer. As I got into summer, I found this Instagram page called Glucose Goddess, which professes the importance of glucose in our lives, that we're going wrong with calorie counting, and instead we should be looking at the glycemic content of things and how much they spike our glucose. I've become so interested in diet because I really think it's an underlooked part of mental health and that we don't really think about it in the healthcare system. The main takeaways from this book, Glucose Revolution, can be found in this other video that I did, which I'll put in the description. But ultimately, just try to eat low glycemic foods so that they don't spike your blood sugar as much. Here's a good quote. The animal tends to eat with his stomach and the man with his brain, wrote the philosopher Alan Watts. If only our body could speak to us, it would be a different story. We'd know exactly why we were hungry again in 2 hours, why we slept poorly last night, and why we felt sluggish the next day. We would make better decisions about what we ate. Our health would improve, our lives would improve. Well, I've got a scoop for you. As it turns out, our bodies speak to us all the time. We just don't know how to listen. Chapter 9, The Inner Robot Has Disappeared. As you can see, the vibe was getting more and more intensely non-fiction. I was going back to my problem solving, researching everything, needing to find an answer to all the questions I had in my life. I knew I needed to go back to the emotional side of things. And there's nothing more emotional than A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. In this book, you come away having a depth and a love for each of the characters, which makes their losses in the book so much more painful because you begin to associate them with yourselves. I'd say the main themes of this book are friendship, trauma, abuse, and self-hatred. Here's a snippet. We all say we want our kids to be happy, only happy and healthy, but we don't want that. We want them to be like we are, or better than we are, We as humans are very unimaginative in that sense. We aren't equipped for the possibility that they might be worse than us. But I guess that would be asking too much. It must be an evolutionary stopgap. If we were also specifically, vividly aware of what might go horribly wrong, we would none of us have children at all. Chapter 10, Happiness. This summer, although I was loving Little Life and really getting into the emotion of it, I was still consuming my non-fiction content through my favourite podcast, Diary of a CEO. My favourite guest on it was this guy called Mo Gaudat, who after his tragic son's death during a very simple surgery has made it his life's mission to get 1 billion people happy. He's one of my heroes. He really changed the way that I look at happiness, and I think this is because I'm very left-minded, and he just puts it all so pragmatically and logically out for me to understand where my bad thoughts come from. The biggest takeaway I got from this book though was about the need to balance our masculine and feminine sides. Here's a snippet. No event ever had the power to make you unhappy until you turned it in a thought, a story that you told yourself, and turned it into your head over and over to make yourself miserable. Chapter 11, Healing. After realizing that my masculine and feminine were so out of balance, I decided to take the rest of the year to try really focus on my feminine qualities, not being so logical, rigid, mathematical, and turning more to being and feeling and being in the moment. I discovered one of my idols, Gabor Mate, the absolute expert on addiction and trauma, and I'm now in the middle of reading his brilliant book, When the Body Says No. This book is for someone who wants to understand how illness is not just a random physical occurrence and heavily tied with our emotions. How we feel, the level of stress and weight that we put on ourselves can completely determine our susceptibility to getting chronically sick. I really believe this is where medicine needs to go ASAP, and we're really missing out on this. Here's a quote. Disease, in other words, is not a simple result of some external attack, but develops in a vulnerable host in whom the internal environment has become disordered. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you got a book recommendation that you might like and also saw a bit of my life in 2022 and how my mind works. That's it for today, guys, and I hope you liked it. Bye.